Snow fell heavily on the cold streets of New York. The streetlights cast a pale yellow glow onto the wet pavement, reflecting off the small puddles and the disorganized footprints of passers-by. A biting wind cut through the air, making the large billboards sway and blowing old newspapers across the sidewalk. In a hidden corner behind a towering building, a young boy sat huddled. Tommy pulled his tattered coat tighter around himself, clutching a small pencil box in his hands. His face was pale from the cold, his lips dry and cracked. Every time the wind blew, he shivered, rubbing his tiny hands together, hoping for a bit of warmth. Pencils, just $1. Tommy's weak voice rose, but was drowned out by the blaring car horns. No one stopped. People hurried by, their faces indifferent. He reached out his hand, offering a forced smile, but the adults' gazes merely brushed past him, as if he didn't exist. A man in a black coat, holding a hot coffee cup, walked by. Tommy looked up, his eyes filled with hope. "Please, sir, buy me a pencil," he whispered. The man didn't even glance back, just frowned and quickened his pace. Tommy sighed and lowered his head. He pulled a pencil from the box, inspecting it. The pencil was ordinary, its tip slightly worn down. He remembered his mother's voice, echoing in his memory. "Tommy, you draw beautifully. One day, you'll draw your very own world." But his mother was no longer around, and his world now was just cold nights on the streets, rare meals, and the faint hope for someone's attention. In the distance, the sound of engines revved. A convoy of sleek, shiny cars with golden emblems glided down the street. The headlights cut through the thin mist. The black car stopped at an intersection not far from Tommy. The car windows slowly lowered. Inside, Donald Trump sat quietly, dressed in a sharp suit, his cold gaze fixed out the window. A charity event awaited him ahead, with carefully prepared speeches. But his attention was drawn to a small figure huddled on the sidewalk. "Wait," Trump spoke, his deep voice commanding but calm. The driver looked surprised, turning to him. "Sir, stop the car. I want to see that boy." The door opened. Trump stepped out, his polished black shoes tapping the pavement. His bodyguards followed, but he raised a hand to signal them to stop. He walked slowly but decisively toward Tommy. Tommy heard the footsteps and quickly looked up. He froze when he saw the tall man with distinctive blonde hair standing right in front of him. Do you want to sell pencils?" Tommy stammered, his voice shaking. Trump knelt down, looking directly into Tommy's eyes. "What are you doing here alone, in this cold night?" Tommy hesitated, gripping the pencil box tightly in his hands. I just want to sell a few pencils, to buy something to eat." A long silence followed. The distant sounds of car horns and wind still filled the air, but everything around them seemed quieter. Trump observed the boy carefully. Tommy's eyes, though tired, still shone with a faint glimmer of hope. "What's your name?" "Tommy." "Tommy." Trump repeated the name, as though considering something. "Have you eaten anything?" Tommy shook his head, his gaze falling away. "I'll eat later, if I sell a few pencils." Trump fell silent. He looked at the small pencil box in Tommy's hands, a simple item, worthless to many. But Tommy held it tightly, as if it were all he had in the world. "Come with me," Trump said firmly. Tommy looked up, his eyes wide. But I'll buy all your pencils, and we'll have dinner together. Is that okay?" Tommy couldn't believe his ears. In his entire life, no one had ever spoken to him like that. Not the hurried passers-by, not the police who had chased him off the sidewalk. And now, a powerful man, Donald Trump, was offering to take him out for dinner. "Really? You think I'm joking?" Trump smiled slightly. "Come on, let's go." Tommy hesitated but stood up. His legs were numb from sitting on the cold sidewalk for hours. Trump extended his hand. Tommy stared at the large hand for a moment before timidly placing his tiny, cold hand into it. Warmth. His hand was strangely warm. Inside the car, Tommy curled up in a corner, his eyes darting around at everything. The soft leather seats, the warm air, the subtle fragrance of luxury perfume. He had never been in such a luxurious car before. Trump turned his head to look at him. "Have you lived on the streets long?" I don't remember. My mom? She passed away a long time ago." His voice trailed off. "What about your dad?" Tommy was silent. He turned away, his gaze out the window. Trump didn't ask further questions. The silence in the car thickened. But in his eyes, something gleamed, understanding. The The car stopped in front of an upscale restaurant. Tommy looked up at the sign, his eyes wide. I can't go in there, he said. Trump smiled softly. You can. Let's go. As they entered the restaurant, all eyes turned toward them. A few people recognized Trump and bowed their heads in greeting. But their surprise was clear when they saw him walking with a shabby-dressed boy. Tommy felt every gaze like sharp needles piercing him. He lowered his head, gripping the pencil box tightly. Don't mind them. Trump leaned in and whispered, You're with me. No one has the right to judge you. Dinner was served. Tommy couldn't take his eyes off the steaming plate of food in front of him. A hearty meal he had only seen on TV. Eat, Trump said. Don't hold back. Tommy picked up the knife and fork with trembling hands. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, as if afraid everything before him was just a dream. Trump watched the boy. Have you ever dreamed of anything? Tommy looked up, his eyes gleaming with a little light. I want to draw. My mom used to say I draw very well. Then why don't you continue? I don't have any paper or drawing pencils. And no one cares. Trump crossed his arms, his expression turning serious. You're wrong, Tommy. I care. And if you still want to draw, I'll give you the opportunity. Tommy looked up, stunned. Really? Are you ready to take that opportunity? Tommy bit his lip, gripping the pencil box tightly. I'm ready. Trump smiled, a rare smile. Then from today, your life starts over. The luxury car glided smoothly through the bustling streets of New York. Tommy sat silently by the window, his small face pressed against the cold glass, his eyes intently watching the dazzling lights outside. He couldn't believe that everything happening around him was real. He still vividly remembered the sensation of his cold, stiff hands being held tightly in the warm hand of that man, Donald Trump. That warmth not only chased away the cold of the winter night, but also sparked a faint light in his heart. Are you okay? The deep voice broke through Tommy's thoughts. Yes, I'm fine, Tommy replied, lowering his head and gripping the pencil box as if it were the last tie connecting him to his old life. Trump glanced at the boy, his sharp, businesslike gaze softening. You don't have to worry. We're just going to a place to have dinner and talk. Tommy nodded, but he couldn't stop feeling anxious. Since his mother passed, he had become accustomed to fending for himself, used to the indifference of adults. Could this be a trap? Would he be sent back to the streets once it was all over? A cozy cafe. The car stopped in front of a small but elegant cafe in Midtown. The warm golden lights from inside seemed to beckon. Tommy looked through the glass and saw well-dressed men and women chatting merrily over steaming cups of coffee. Let's get out. Trump opened the door and looked at Tommy. Tommy swallowed hard and stepped out. The marble floor beneath his feet gleamed so brightly that he could see his reflection. He nervously tugged at the hem of his ragged coat, trying to hide his skinny, dirty hands. The staff greeted Trump with a professional smile, though their curiosity was evident as they glanced at Tommy. VIP table as usual, Mr. Trump? Trump nodded without explaining. He walked straight in, with Tommy hesitantly following behind. The room was warm, the lighting soft. Tommy sat down, his eyes wide, taking in the surroundings. The glossy walnut table, the shiny cutlery neatly placed next to a delicate porcelain plate. He had never been in a place like this before. A server brought the menu over. What would you like to eat? Trump asked, his tone relaxed as if they were just having a normal conversation. Tommy shook his head and muttered, I don't know. I've never been to a place like this before. Trump raised an eyebrow, then turned to the server. Give me the best steak you have here. And bring an extra one for the boy. The server nodded and left. The conversation began. The atmosphere became quiet. Tommy lowered his head, unwilling to look at the man across from him. Partly out of shyness, partly because he didn't know what would happen next. Trump leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest, his gaze fixed firmly on the boy. Tommy, tell me about yourself. Tommy jumped, startled. About me? Yes. How is it that a boy like you has to live on the streets in the cold of the night? Tommy hesitated. He lowered his head, his frail hands clutching the pencil box tightly. My mom, she passed away. My dad, left a long time ago. I don't have a home. I live on the street, selling pencils to get money for food. Some days, I can't sell anything, so I go hungry. Tommy's voice trailed off. The room seemed to go silent, so quiet that the sound of distant cups clinking could be heard. Trump said nothing. He just quietly looked at the boy. There was something in the story that reminded him of an old part of his own memories. The food arrived. The scent of the sizzling steak filled the room. Tommy's eyes widened as he looked at the plate before him, his lips slightly moving. "Go ahead and eat," Trump said with a small smile. "Don't be shy." Tommy hesitated, picking up the knife and fork. He cut a small piece and brought it to his mouth. The rich, savory taste exploded on his tongue. How long had it been since he had had a meal like this? He couldn't remember. "Is it good?" Tommy nodded eagerly, his mouth full of food. Thank you, sir." Trump's memories. Trump took a sip of coffee, his gaze distant. "You know, Tommy, there was a time when no one believed in me." Tommy paused, looking up at him. "Really?" "Yes. When I was young, no one thought I'd amount to anything. They said I was too ambitious, too different. But I didn't give up. Because I believed in myself." Tommy looked at him attentively. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Trump placed his coffee cup down on the table, his expression turning serious. "No one is born great. The strong ones are the ones who rise after falling. I've fallen many times, but I've always gotten back up." Tommy lowered his head, reflecting. The words echoed in his mind like a tiny seed beginning to sprout. A new opportunity. The dinner finished. Tommy stood up and bowed his head in thanks. He thought everything was over. But Trump turned to him, his voice firm. "Tommy, do you want a chance?" The boy looked confused. "A chance?" "Yes, a chance to change your life." Tommy took a step back, his eyes filled with uncertainty. Why me?" "Because I see something in you. Something you don't even know you have." Tommy was silent. In his heart, 100 questions echoed. But deep down, another voice whispered, "Trust this time." I'll try." Trump smiled, a rare smile. "Good. From today, you won't have to live on the streets anymore." The streetlights outside still shone brightly. But for Tommy, tonight, that light felt warmer than ever. It was late at night. The streets of New York were growing quiet, with only the sound of the wind howling through the skyscrapers. The luxury convoy continued to roll on, turning onto the road leading straight to Trump Tower. Tommy sat silently in the car, his eyes wide, not leaving the window. When the towering skyscraper with its sparkling lights appeared before him, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Trump Tower. The building he had only ever seen on television, the place he once thought he would never step foot in. "Are we going inside?" Tommy asked softly, his voice trembling. "Yes," Trump answered, his eyes straight ahead. "From today, this will be the place where your new beginning starts." Tommy shook his head, leaning back against the seat as if afraid of something. "But I can't. I'm just a homeless child. I don't belong there." Trump turned to look at him, his usual sharp gaze now softened. "You're wrong. Anyone has the right to dream. And anyone deserves the chance to change their life. You just have to dare to step in." The first step into a new world. The large glass door of Trump Tower opened. Tommy stepped in, his small footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor. Inside, it felt like another world. The high ceiling with a brilliant crystal chandelier, the sparkling glass elevators, and everyone dressed impeccably, walking with confidence. Tommy quickly tugged at the hem of his tattered coat, his head lowered. He could feel the curious, surprised, and even skeptical gazes from the people around him. Who is that boy? Why is Mr. Trump bringing a child like that here? Whispers filled the air, but Trump paid no attention. "Follow me, Tommy." They stepped into the glass elevator, where they could see the entire city bathed in the glow of lights. Tommy stood still, his eyes filled with confusion and fear. "How do you feel?" Trump asked, his eyes gazing out at the New York night. I feel the city is so vast, but it also feels so lonely." Trump smiled. "You're right. This city is big, but it only truly belongs to you when you dare to dream. Remember that." A special room. The elevator door opened. They stepped into a large room with glass windows overlooking the city. Inside, everything was luxurious and refined. Abstract paintings on the walls, cream-colored leather sofas, and a shiny black piano placed in the corner. Tommy froze, unwilling to move forward. I don't really belong here." Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "I told you, from today, this will be your home. But only when you're ready to change." Tommy looked up at him, his eyes filled with doubt and fear. "But I don't know what to do." "You will learn. I will help you." The promise of a changed life. Trump sat down in a chair facing the large window, signaling for Tommy to sit next to him. The city of New York sparkled behind him like a testament to success and power. "Tommy," Trump began, his deep voice calm but firm, Do you know why I brought you here? Tommy shook his head. Because I see something very special in you. Something not everyone has. Tommy was surprised. Me? I'm just a homeless child, with no home, no money, nothing. Trump smiled. But you have something that many people don't. Ambition. Tommy remained silent. Ambition is the only thing no one can take away from you. I've had everything, and then lost everything. But what kept me standing was the ambition to be the best. Trump leaned forward, his gaze now more serious than ever. You told me you wanted to draw. Is that right? Tommy nodded. My mom used to say I drew beautifully. But I don't have paper or drawing pencils anymore. Trump stood up and walked over to a large desk nearby. He took out a stack of pristine white paper and a high-end set of colored pencils. From today, you will draw your life again, starting with this blank page. Tommy's eyes widened as he looked at the stack of paper and the set of pencils, hardly believing what he saw. But how can I? You will. I believe in you. And you must believe in yourself too. A new life begins. The days that followed were difficult, but full of hope for Tommy. He was enrolled in a prestigious private school, where only children from wealthy families usually went. Tommy stepped through the school gates with a heavy heart, filled with anxiety. The eyes of the other students turned toward him. Who is that? Why is he dressed like that? I heard he's the homeless child Mr. Trump brought here. Whispers, disdainful glances. Tommy lowered his head, clutching his old, worn backpack. The first challenges Tommy tried to fit in, but it wasn't easy. He struggled to keep up with the lessons. His classmates kept their distance and teased him. There's no way a homeless kid like you belongs here. Do you think you deserve to be here? The cruel words felt like knives cutting into Tommy's heart. Many nights, he sat alone in the large room at Trump Tower, staring at the pristine drawing paper, unable to draw anything. Maybe I don't deserve this. I don't belong here. Trump's return one evening. As Tommy sat idly by his desk, the door to his room swung open. Trump stepped in. What are you doing, Tommy? Tommy jumped, quickly hiding the stack of paper. I was just thinking. Trump walked over, his gaze stern but filled with understanding. I heard you're having a hard time at school. Tommy lowered his head, his voice choking with emotion. I've tried. But everyone thinks I don't belong. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Maybe I should give up. Trump was silent for a moment. Then he leaned down, looking Tommy directly in the eyes. Do you know? A winner never gives up, and the ones who give up will never win. Tommy looked at him, his eyes filled with tears. But I'm scared. I was scared too. But do you know the only difference between someone successful and someone who fails? Tommy shook his head. It's that the successful person never gives up, no matter how afraid they are. The promise engraved. Trump placed his hand on Tommy's shoulder and squeezed gently. You've come this far. Don't let fear stop you. I believe in you, and I know you can do it. Tommy looked at the stack of paper on the desk. He remembered what his mother had said, remembered that cold winter night when he sat on the sidewalk selling pencils. And now, he was standing before an opportunity he had never dared to dream of. He took a pencil. His hands trembled, but his eyes were more determined than ever. I promise. I won't give up. Trump smiled, turned, and left the room, leaving Tommy with the blank page. A new page, a new life. And so, Tommy's journey of transformation officially began. The first rays of spring sunlight streamed through the large window of the room at Trump Tower. Tommy sat at his desk, his gaze focused on the pristine white sheet of paper in front of him. In his hand was the pencil he once sold on the street, the only remaining connection to his old life. But today, he wasn't just staring at it like before. He began to draw. The struggles keeping up with the pace at the prestigious private school wasn't easy. Tommy had once thought that working hard was enough. But he was wrong. The complex math problems, the long essays, and the presentations overwhelmed him. He studied day and night, but his grades remained low. Even worse was the coldness from his peers. Oh, it's the street kid again? You think you can be better than us? Probably just because he knows Mr. Trump. Tommy heard these words every day. Despite trying to ignore them, he couldn't stop himself from feeling hurt. One afternoon, after school, Tommy sat alone on a bench in the schoolyard. He watched his classmates laughing and playing, then glanced at the drawing pad in his hands. His hand tightened around the pencil, but when he placed it on the paper, he couldn't draw anything. I really don't belong here. This was all a mistake. The late-night conversation that night, Tommy sat quietly in his room. The drawing pad lay open on the desk, but it remained blank. The door to his room opened quietly. Donald Trump stepped in. "Are you still awake?" he asked, his voice low. Tommy quickly stood up, but Trump gestured for him to sit back down. "What's going on, Tommy?" Tommy remained silent. After a moment, he spoke. "I can't do it." Trump crossed his arms, leaning back against the desk. "Do what?" "I can't be as good as everyone else. I can't draw anything. At school, everyone thinks I don't belong there." "Maybe they're right." Tommy lowered his head, his voice hoarse. "Maybe I should just go back to the streets. That's where I belong." Trump looked at him, his eyes full of seriousness. "Do you remember when we first met?" Tommy looked up, nodding, confused. "Back then, I saw something in you. Something you hadn't even realized." Trump stepped closer, kneeling to be at eye level with Tommy. "Do you know what that was?" Tommy shook his head. Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "Resilience. The lesson of resilience. I've been bankrupt," Trump began, his gaze distant as he looked out the window. "I lost everything. Money, fame, even friends. But I didn't give up. Because I knew, as long as I was still standing, I could get everything back." Tommy sat quietly, listening to every word. "You're the same. You survived on the streets. You got through days of hunger and cold, with no one to help you. Do you think that was easy?" Trump turned to look Tommy directly in the eyes. "No, only the resilient can do that." "But what if I'm not good enough?" Tommy whispered. "No one is born great, but anyone can become great if they don't give up." Tommy lowered his head, looking at the blank page on the desk. His hand began to move. "Then, where should I start?" Trump smiled. "By not giving up." The turning point from that day, Tommy changed. He woke up earlier to review his lessons. During the day, he focused on the lessons. At night, he practiced drawing tirelessly. The blank pages slowly began to fill with sketches, initially clumsy, but becoming sharper with each passing day. He started drawing his memories. The street corner where he used to sit selling pencils, his mother's gentle gaze, the cold nights under the streetlight. But not everything went smoothly. The greatest challenge, the school organized a citywide drawing competition with the theme, My Dream. Tommy decided to participate. This was his chance to prove himself. But pressure mounted. The night before the submission deadline, Tommy sat, staring blankly at the unfinished drawing. He had almost completed it, but he couldn't finish it. Fear, doubt, hurt, all the negative emotions overwhelmed him. "I'm not good enough. I can't win. I'll fail again." The moment of recovery, the door to his room opened quietly. Trump appeared again, this time without saying anything, just silently observing the unfinished drawing on the desk. "Do you know why I believe in you?" Trump spoke after a long silence. Tommy didn't answer. "Because only those who have fallen know how to rise again. And you are one of those people." Trump placed his hand on Tommy's shoulder and squeezed gently. "You don't need to be the best. You just need to not give up." Those words echoed in Tommy's mind all through the night. He picked up the pencil. This time, he wasn't drawing for victory. He was drawing for himself, for the journey he had gone through, for his mother, and for the one who believed in him. The results announcement, the auditorium was packed with people. All the students who participated in the competition anxiously awaited. Tommy stood silently in the corner, his eyes fixed on the stage. His heart pounded in his chest. The first prize of this year's competition goes to... The auditorium held its breath. Tommy Carter with the piece, Journey from the Streets to My Dream. The moment of victory, the auditorium erupted in applause. Tommy stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. "Tommy, go up and accept your prize." Tommy walked up to the stage amidst thunderous applause. The lights shone on him, but in his eyes, there was only the figure of Trump standing below, smiling. As he received the trophy from the judges, Tommy looked up, his voice trembling but full of determination. "Thank you for believing in me. I promise, I will never give up." An open ending that night at Trump Tower, Tommy placed the trophy on the desk. He turned to look at the man who had changed his life. "I did it." Trump smiled, his eyes full of pride. "I never doubted that." Tommy looked out the window, where the city of New York was brightly lit in the night. He knew this was just the beginning. A new journey had officially begun. Time passed quickly, and Tommy gradually adapted to his new life. From a homeless boy wandering the streets, he had now become a part of a world he had once only dared to dream about. However, life was not always easy. Although winning the drawing competition had been a major turning point, Tommy still faced many challenges. The change in the following months, Tommy returned to school with a newfound confidence. But this time, he was not only fighting for himself but also for other kids like him who had never had a chance. He decided to participate in volunteer activities, helping children in difficult situations. Gradually, he realized that not only talent but also perseverance and kindness were the true things that could change lives. With each new lesson, Tommy not only learned knowledge but also learned patience, how to face difficulties, and how to help others. He began to share his story during school talks, telling about what he had gone through and what he had learned from it. Other children gradually felt closer to him and understood him better. The feeling of being abandoned and stigmatized that had long lingered gradually faded away. Another door opens one day. Tommy received an unexpected call from a famous art organization, inviting him to participate in a program for young talents. They had heard about his story through the media and were impressed by his painting journey from streets to dreams. He would have the opportunity to exhibit his work at a large exhibition. Tommy could hardly believe his ears. After all that he had been through, he finally had a real chance to do art, something he had always dreamed of. However, with this opportunity came a new challenge. He would have to face fierce competition from other outstanding talents. Could he do it? This question haunted him, but he remembered Trump's words. No one is born great, but anyone can become great if they don't give up. He decided not to let fear take over him. He would not give up. The paintings and the dreams. A few months later, Tommy had completed a collection of paintings that bore his distinct mark. The paintings were not just art, they were a reflection of his life, a world filled with light and darkness, the rough roads he had walked, and a journey that never stops. He painted about the days he lived on the streets, the moments he shared with his mother, and the beautiful memories. He also painted about the future, about dreams not yet realized but always shining ahead. When the exhibition officially opened, Tommy entered a room filled with art lovers, famous artists, and collectors. He felt a little nervous, but the anxiety faded when he saw people stopping in front of his paintings, admiring every detail, feeling the stories hidden within them. A famous collector approached him and smiled. "We'll definitely buy this painting. You have real talent, Tommy." Tommy could hardly believe his ears. These words were not only recognition of his talent, but also confirmation that he had succeeded in turning his dream into reality. The meeting with Trump at the White House. After the exhibition, Tommy received a special invitation from Donald Trump, now the president, to visit the White House. This was a great honor for him, someone who had once been a homeless child on the streets. He felt a little confused but couldn't hide the joy in his heart. Upon arriving, Tommy was warmly welcomed. Trump was waiting for him at the door, smiling as if he already knew Tommy would succeed. "Congratulations, Tommy." Trump shook his hand. "I knew you would make it." Tommy looked into his eyes, filled with gratitude. "Thank you so much. You gave me a chance, and I will never forget that." Trump patted him on the shoulder. "You don't have to thank me. You did all that because of yourself. I just showed you that nothing is impossible." Tommy looked around. The White House, a place that had once only appeared in distant dreams, was now where he stood, strong, confident, and full of hope. He had left behind his past to begin a new journey, one of resilience, effort, and belief in himself. A speech about belief and hope. The next day, Tommy was invited to speak before a crowd at a national conference on education and art. He stood at the podium, looking down at the thousands of people listening intently. He took a deep breath and began his speech. "Hello everyone, I'm Tommy, and I come from a very different place than you. A place where no one thought I'd be here today. I was once a homeless child, living under torn clothes, selling pencils to survive. I had nothing but one dream. One day, I would be able to draw. I had to fight a lot to get what I have now. But the important thing is that I never gave up. And today, I want to tell you one thing. Believe in yourself. As long as you don't give up, you can go anywhere you want." The final message. And so, Tommy not only became a successful person but also an inspiration to thousands of others. His story was not just about changing himself, but also about finding opportunities, about perseverance, and about never giving up, no matter how many challenges you face. Tommy proved that no one can decide your worth except yourself, and once you are determined, you can change the world. Never give up. Believe in yourself and follow your dreams until the end. Tommy had not only changed his own life but also the lives of those around him. He proved that one opportunity, one belief, and one determination could turn everything into reality. And with every step he took, Tommy knew that his journey had only just begun. Tommy stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd watching him. He was no longer a homeless child on the sidewalk. He was an artist, a winner, and most importantly, someone who had found the light in his own darkness. Tommy's story was not just about rising from adversity, but about believing in oneself and the power of dreams that never fade. He had once sat under the streetlight, seemingly trapped in the darkness. But it was his belief in himself, his unwavering perseverance, and one single opportunity that had helped him change his fate. Every person can change their life, as long as we never give up. Don't be afraid, don't worry about what others think, because only you know the true strength within you. Believe in yourself and take action. That is the key to success. Tommy proved that nothing is impossible. Every step, no matter how small, can make a difference. And if you dare to dream, dare to act, nothing can stop you from achieving your goals. The final message: believe in yourself, persevere in pursuing your dreams, and never give up. Because life only begins to change when you decide not to give up anymore. Tommy not only changed his life but also inspired millions of others, proving that every story can be a lesson, and every lesson is a step forward on the path to a better future.